to Grounded Guidance, a casual space for conversation with curiously intuitive minds as we explore fascinating topics that stretch our edges to think differently, live aligned with the pathway we are choosing each day, and propel us to move through life with a new lens on the world. Each week, we will explore in this space ideas that may challenge conventional thinking, encourage us to be intentional with our thoughts and actions, and grow through conversation with each other and with you. Join us.
All right.
Hello.
I did that.
Here we are.
And that was better than ever, right?
It looks like you swung your hand and opened the door. All this
Who
magic.
needs the
oh my
cowboy?
What did you
All
say?
right, I'll leave.
No, just kidding.
Oh gosh, that was good. And we all have sound, and man, it's
I
a good
hear
night.
all of you. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have sound last week. Sorry, everybody.
Well, we heard you, but the playback was not great. So
No, it sounded terrible.
Oh well, it happens.
oh, good. How y'all doing tonight?
Jason's wondering if there are brothels on the moon yet.
You guys, we've gone from wanting you guys to join our cult to now talking about brothels on the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't get better than this. I don't know. I have yet to discover a brothel on the moon. That's hilarious.
It's gonna happen someday. Someday.
I mean,
there will be
anything can
one.
happen, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, the moon landing. All right, before we get into the moon, let's talk about what's been weird and wise and wacky, wonderful.
Or wacky.
Yeah, tell me your stories. I want to hear them.
Mrs. Movies, you go first.
I don't know. I want to say maybe like an epiphany or just a moment of what I think is maybe some clarity. I was going to bed 2 nights ago, maybe last night, and I was just thinking about it. And before I met Mr. Movies, I was a huge movie fan, right? Like avid movie buff, watched movies all the time. Then after I met him, I don't like movies. I don't want to watch them. He makes me watch them, which is great. But it's almost for me like my whole life, the universe has been pushing me to find this person that really loves movies. And then once I found them, they're like, all right, well, you're good now. So we don't need to, you don't need movies anymore. I don't know. Because that was like the one thing that kind of like brought us together. That was our commonality point. So I thought that was kind of like a weird.
I'm really surprised to hear you say you don't like movies anymore. I mean, that is your jam.
I used to be, yeah,
And
until I
watch a
met
lot of
him. And I
movies.
was like, I know. Maybe that's why I just don't like movies anymore, because I watch them all the time. I don't know.
That's a really interesting perspective.
That's why they call her Mrs. Movies.
Right.
Right. Good
You
one.
got the title and everything.
You used to come to my house years ago, and you could just crush like 6 movies in a weekend.
Oh, yeah. In college, I almost flunked out of college one year because I did nothing but watched movies. Yeah, I was kind of an addict to the movies, but
Yeah, that's cool.
it's crazy.
And you liked Ted the other day.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny. Never seen it. It was so great.
Speaking
Karen, have
of
you ever seen it?
movies- I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ted? Did you ever see the movie Ted with the teddy bear? Yeah, it doesn't seem like a movie in your wheelhouse, but it was very funny.
Yes, I've heard it's very funny. Never mind. Well, I don't want to get too far off the topic. I was going to talk about a current movie that's out, but never mind. Oh, Berly, what about you? What's going on in your world?
I've had some magical moments, but I feel like they wouldn't really make sense to everybody. So I'll just share my new favorite hobby,
I can't wait.
huckleberry picking.
Oh, yes.
I've gone 3 times since I talked to you girls about it the first time I went.
What do you love about it?
Like, it's so magical and abundant, and when you find a bush full of freaking berries, you're like. Also, I've loved huckleberries my whole life. They're my favorite fruit, and so I've always bought them for like $50 for a gallon. They're crazy expensive, and when you go out and pick them yourself, it's so much more satisfying because you're like, I don't
The
know.
fruits of your labor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Purple gold, like Kayla said.
Is that the variety that you were picking?
No, they just call it purple gold because it is so expensive to buy.
Yeah.
They're purple, but you pay out of the ass for them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know what a huckleberry is, they're extremely tart.
They're like tart little tiny blueberries. They're so good.
I have some in the fridge.
Do you? Yeah.
I should have brought them here.
I particularly like them. I think because they're too tart.
Oh, you just haven't had them right. If you put them in a huckleberry bar in the cookbook. Oh gosh, it's like a sweet cookie. A sweet cookie bar with the huckleberries in it. Oh, it's so good. So good.
You guys are hilarious. Well, thanks for sharing. That was good.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, this is about the moon. So when I was a kid, the moon was always something that I kind of pondered on, and I loved to look at night. And you guys have probably heard like the man and the moon story. It's actually a fairy tale. It's a very short fairy tale. And I wasn't really into it, but I always loved to look at the craters of the moon and see if I could see a face in the moon. And so I want to let's see if I can do this here. So I just put these in here because I thought this was kind of funny. People taking pictures of the moon with these, There's a name for this, and we talked about it a couple podcasts ago where you start seeing faces and things. Mm-hmm. But anyways, what I wanted to share was a poem about the moon. I love poetry. So the moon, this is by Robert Stevenson. The moon has a face like the clock in the hall. She shines on thieves on the garden wall, on streets and fields and harbor quays, and birdies asleep in the forks of the trees. The squalling cat and the squeaking mouse, the howling dog by the door of the house, the bat that lies in the bed at noon, all love to be out by the light of the moon. But all of the things that belong to the day, cuddled to sleep, be out of her way, and flowers and children close their eyes, till up in the morning the sun shall arise.
That's nice.
I know. I'll take that off now.
Cute.
So. All right.
That's a great way to start this episode off.
I know, isn't it fun? I know. We needed something different, right? I was feeling something different.
No.
So I was doing a little thinking about the moon this week. Okay, first let's talk about this poll we put up, you guys. So it was the closest poll we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It was separated by like one vote. And going into, was it Saturday night? We were going to do the Titanic. We were doing the Titanic. And I messaged Mrs. Movies and I said, no, we got to wait. We got to wait one more day. I think we got like 3 more votes and it tipped it over to the moon landing. So
yeah. It was neck and neck the whole time.
Yeah, you guys are super passionate about some of these topics. I think we'll do them eventually, all of them. But
for sure.
The moon landing won this week. So a couple things I was thinking about that I just wanted to share before we dive into this is, so we're kind of diving headfirst into this big conspiracy theory about the moon landing. Did it happen? Did it not? And I really want to make sure we start with this. So you can find whatever you are seeking to confirm on the internet or any other dark holes of existence. There will always be people that think like you and always people that don't. The internet, history books, Encyclopedia Britannica, like my young age, or the library. Do people even use the library anymore? I do.
I don't
love
think
the
so.
library. I love the library. It's full of many great rabbit holes and places really of never-ending information. But does it hold all the information? The important part of all of this is both sides can be right. We can hold polarity in both of these or in these topics, And what I encourage all of us to do is just really dive deeper, consider your source, who's writing the article, who's pandering the knowledge, how do you arrive at your conclusions. It's really not enough to say, I read this somewhere, or I heard it on a podcast, or someone I told trust me, or someone I trust told me. But what do you really think is happening? Is NASA the source of this information? Do you believe everything NASA says to be true? Dig deeper, question everything, trust your instincts. And then also like take it a step further. Look what's happening, or look what was happening politically and socially and economically during these historical events. Turning on Fox News or doom scrolling Reddit to gain your information is potentially fanning the flame of misinformation and misrepresentation. So look at who's delivering the news, who owns these companies, what is the agenda, find the source, and be willing to stretch your thoughts around what is the norm and what you've been conditioned to believe. And remember, you don't have to believe everything you hear, read, or see. I just thought it was good to start with that because we're going to dive both sides tonight. And we both could be right?
Can we start out by going around and saying who believes and who doesn't believe?
Well, maybe we should wait till the end to do that. What do you guys think?
And does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm sure.
Does it matter what we believe if we
well, I'm
just want to have a
curious,
conversation about it?
We can just, I don't even know.
I'm curious too.
When I first started researching, I was like, oh my gosh, we actually didn't go to the moon. We've been lied to this whole time.
How did that make you feel? Like, do you feel like you've just been like,
it was kind of it was a reality check of like, yeah, you can't just believe everything you hear sometimes. You should, research, like you said. But I did research, and now I am a believer, so.
I love it. You've come full circle.
I did.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's
our chat has some interesting comments. Like every astronaut was a twin, and the twins never came back.
So, really, what are we talking about? We're talking about tonight the Apollo 11 mission that happened back in 1969 that put the first man on the moon. This was back in July of 1969.
One step for man. Help me out with the rest of the quote.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And he butchered that line, actually.
Oh,
yeah, that was like really bad.
Yeah. No, he didn't butcher it. He didn't say it as he was supposed to say it as it was written, but.
Oh.
Who didn't?
Neil Armstrong. He couldn't remember the line specifically.
Yes.
See, he said it a little bit backwards from the way that it was originally written.
Oh, really? Do you know what he was supposed to say?
I don't know the specific. It was like he inverted a couple of. He was supposed to say for, I think. Oh no, I don't know. I'm not gonna say because I can't remember.
Somebody in the chat figure it out and let us know.
Y'all, that's why I don't tell jokes, because I can't ever remember the dang punchline correctly, and then I just screw it up.
Oh yeah, one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind is what he was supposed to say. So he forgot the A. So that's not a big bluff there. But
it sounds like the Mandela effect. We forgot an A.
Yeah.
A part got lost in the transmission here on Earth. Yep. Okay, let me.
Thank you, Milner.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So, there were 3 people on this mission: Commander Neil Armstrong, Lunar Module Pilot Buzz Aldrin, and then Michael Collins. And I don't know exactly what he did, but I'm going to add this.
It was his job to stay behind in the shuttle.
The module, right?
Because the part that went down, the lunar lander.
Yes.
It was his job to stay in the atmosphere while they were down there.
In orbit.
Yeah.
Right. So here are some pictures of.
Poor guy went all the way to the moon, didn't even get to go down.
I know, right? Man, what a shoddy job.
Yeah.
Or you just get to stay back. Yeah, so here's a couple pictures of liftoff from the Kennedy Space Center on July 16th. And then this was a really helpful image when I was kind of researching this. So there's three parts. The command module, which is the cabin with the 3 astronauts, which is up top where it says command. And then the service module, which supported the command module with propulsion, electrical power, oxygen, and water. And then the lunar module, which is the part down at the base, which is what they actually put on the moon, which we'll look at pictures of that as well. So it took them 4 days to get to the moon.
It's a long trip.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They left July 16th. They didn't touch down till July 20th.
Do you think that's why is that interesting?
It's just a long time, you guys. That takes a long time.
I just like envision them just sitting in that small thing for 4 days
Like
straight.
There was
down or backwards.
there was
No cell phone service.
there was some like sleep requirements as well. So from what I have heard in that documentary that I listened to, they actually had to, like, they made it to the moon. When they landed on the moon, they actually had to sleep for 12 hours or something. They had to take a 7 or 12 hour nap before they were allowed to get out. So can you imagine like getting to the moon and then being like, okay, time to take a nap before we can get out and walk around?
Yeah, you know, I did see that too. They landed on July 20th, 1969 at 2017 Universal Time and didn't step foot on the moon surface until 6 hours later. So it was July 21st.
Oh, 6. So 6 hour nap, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have to nap?
I don't know. I don't know.
It was just like a safety requirement, I think.
But why didn't they just nap on the way there?
That's a great question.
I mean, come on. I mean, you're just through all the planets and galaxies. Just like take a little cat nap on the way.
Rick Colombo's got a good point. He said it's a really far ways away, and it takes 23 hours to get to Australia. So I mean, that's a whole day to get to just the other side of our planet, right? And the moon's much further away than Australia.
If you think about it, though, like there are 3 of you on board. I don't think I would be getting a wink of sleep. This is kind of a huge deal. Somebody always has to probably for part of it, it doesn't have to be completely manned. But once you're approaching the moon, I'm guessing that all hands are on deck. Yeah. Nobody should be sleeping, right?
Right. Also, I mean, I guess, you know, if they were going to step foot on the moon, they would want to be well rested. So because you're not just going to want to go step on the moon and be like, all right, well, this was fun, see you guys later. They're going to go down and take all of their measurements and collect all their samples and all of those things. They're going to spend hours down there working. So,
well, what I read was they spent 2.25 hours exploring the site they named Tranquility Base. They collected 46.5 pounds of lunar material to bring back to Earth as pilot Michael Collins flew the command module Columbia in lunar orbit. So it's like basically, hey, yep, see you later. So
yeah, he was their taxi, just rounding the block, right? Just going around the block, waiting for him to come back.
Let me know when you're ready to leave. Yeah,
Cheers.
so what's interesting about the Apollo 11 is this was broadcast on live TV worldwide, which obviously made me think about a little bit, and I think we'll get into this, kind of what was happening in the political climate during this time. But I thought that was so interesting. So this is broadcast live. Think about where technology has moved since then. How do you broadcast this on live television? I mean, I can't even get a signal going through the hills by my house sometimes.
But imagine you're not inhibited by any physical things in space, if you're shooting signals from space, what are you running into? You're not running into any hillsides or mountaintops or terrain that's blocking signal from getting there. So they're just shooting it straight down to another satellite dish that is on Earth.
I'm not buying it. I just think that's crazy.
Well, okay, also keep in mind they did not broadcast the entire thing, right? So like parts of it were animations and renderings, artist renderings of what would be happening at that time. And I think my understanding is the video at the time, like they had the audio, but the video at the time, they didn't utilize it until weeks later when they got back to Earth.
The video or the audio?
So the video. The audio was there, but the images, the imagery that came from the moon, they didn't actually have that to share with the public until the astronauts returned. Because they captured it on film.
I'm confused. Didn't they do it live when they landed?
Yeah, they were filming live, but they were just getting audio on the live broadcast.
So what were people looking at?
Home. I think they had a lot of video of the control room. And then the radio. And then pictures and stills of think of a news broadcast when somebody's not on screen, they show a picture of them and then their name and all that. It's just something like that.
Yeah, you can go to NASA and look, like Google, or no, sorry, not Google, in their search bar on NASA, type in Apollo 11, and it has a lot of their transcripts and video. Not video. Yeah, there are some videos and audio clips from the different portions of that mission.
Yeah, so I think that's like a major misconception. Like they weren't actually, the people here on Earth were not watching the men take steps on the moon live. Mm-hmm. They were hearing the audio of it happening. They were watching the command center as it was happening, but I don't think they were actually seeing any actual imagery. That didn't come until the astronauts returned. Because that's why some of the photos you see are such high quality, right? That's like one of the things that people used to say, oh no, this was fake. Look at how good the pictures are. Like the pictures are, it's because it was filmed on film, right? And what is it? I don't understand film, but he does. Like film's really high quality, right? So what is film? It's done in it's not 1080p. What is the measurement for?
It's like 10K.
10K, right?
Resolution.
Like the resolution on actual film is super high quality. So the pictures today look even better than what they would have been then.
So here's a picture of the lunar lander. I don't know if that's the name of it. The lunar module. That is the lunar module on the moon.
8K.
And then you'll see Neil Armstrong coming out of the little, whatever it is, porthole.
I just don't understand how they got this thing back into the spaceship.
They didn't.
Yeah, I think they left it behind.
Wait, so then how did they get back into the spaceship?
They went back. Well, I don't know. Gosh, I don't
the
know.
top part.
Go back to the picture.
The top part.
Right
here.
See where the module is?
See little
and
people
then see
up
where
there?
The engine is?
In the command
very
module
top.
is where they...
So that
they're laying on their back, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they...
So the top part of the lunar module has basically rocket boosters underneath it. And so when they left the moon's surface, they shoot these rocket boosters and then have to kind of hope and pray that they connect into
That's what I mean. Is it just like a one shot kind
module.
of thing? Or is it like...
Yeah.
Well, to get off the moon is easier than getting off our planet because there's no atmosphere to go through. There's less gravity. So basically, they just had to point back at the Earth with a little bit of rocket boost and let
I feel like
the
I have
Earth's
a lot
gravitational pull them back in once they got.
There is. I did watch a really good video on YouTube showing how the lunar module left
That's why he had to stay in orbit. They had to catch up with him. So they shot back out, just part of it though, just the top part of it. They shot back out, and he basically catches them during his orbit around the moon, and then they
That's what's amazing to me,
back.
that they like were able, I don't know. I have a lot of questions though about space that might sound super dumb.
Bring it on.
I think just yeah.
But this is the first time I've learned about any of this stuff or space, really. So, but how are they like? Okay, so when they land on the moon, they're walking on the moon. How do they not? If there's no gravity,
there is gravity. It's a third the amount of gravity that Earth has.
That's why they jump around.
That's why they kind of bounce.
Moon shoes.
Okay,
kind of bounce.
That's why they're not getting like sucked out to space.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
If you jump really hard, though, you never know.
And there's like must be some kind of like ozone layer around the moon for them to like. Yeah, how does it work? Where does the gravity like pull them in?
The mass of the moon is what creates gravity.
So when you get close enough to the moon, you like you're like a magnet to it.
You know, I mean, I guess technically, although because it's a third the amount of gravity as Earth, it would not be the same type of pull that like Earth has, right?
Okay.
But I imagine the moon helped them a little bit in getting there. Don't you think? I don't know.
I think your questions are good, Berly. I mean, I think if you have them, a lot of people have them, right? And those are, I certainly very scratched the surface of what all of our galaxies and all these. It's amazing to me.
This is perfect. Mass has gravity, so the bigger mass something is, the more gravitational pull it would have. So the moon is smaller than the Earth, so it has less gravity, but it does have gravity because it's so big.
So once you get close enough to it, the mass will suck you in.
Yeah, essentially.
All right, cool.
It's the same reason we orbit the sun is gravity.
Right. Yeah. The
sun's mass.
The sun is
pulls all
using its gravity to hold all of the
solar
planets around it while it's rotating. We're rotating and revolving around it.
Gosh,
Eventually
there's so
someday
much.
So the gray color from the moon is mostly oxygen, silicon, magnesium, iron, calcium, and aluminum. The lighter color rocks are usually plagioclase, feldspar, while the darker rocks are pyroxene.
The astronauts describe it as like, not like sand, but it does poof almost like silica, like a silica.
So let's talk a little bit about the Apollo program. So why was it created? Why did we create this Apollo program? Why did the United States dig deep into creating this? Because it was only 1958 when NASA hadn't even been created yet, right?
Yeah, the Cold War, right? I mean, the Cold War was the catalyst, right?
Yeah, they were in a space race with Russia.
Yeah.
And NASA was formed in 1958. And Russia was really, talking about how they're going to, well, they had done a lot of big things, like put a lot of people, I'm trying to look at my notes here, a lot of people in space.
I just didn't realize it was so political going to the moon, that it was like a race.
Oh, yes.
It was all political, essentially, right?
Let's talk a little about that, because that honestly was my favorite part of this whole discussion. So if we look at what was happening in the United States in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it's pretty massive. So from 1952 to 1972, we had 5 presidents in power. If you stop and think about that for a second, that is the biggest position in power in our country. 5 presidents, and a lot of them were taken out of power. We had one that was assassinated. We had one that resigned. We had a vice president that resigned. we had people that didn't seek re-election, but there were a lot of things happening politically that really fueled the movement of this space race. So just to recap, Eisenhower was elected in 1952. JFK was elected in 1960 with Lyndon B. Johnson as his vice. JFK was assassinated in 63. Lyndon B. Johnson was elected after the assassination and then reelected in 64, but did not seek reelection in 68 because we were in the throes of the Vietnam War. And he lost a lot of that the Americans were losing their confidence in him because he started the draft, sent so many thousands of Americans to Vietnam, and then we were losing so many troops over there. So he didn't seek re-election, and then Richard Nixon took office, and then there was a huge scandal with Richard Nixon, and his vice president resigned, and then Richard Nixon resigned, and then Gerald Ford became president. I mean, it was a really tumultuous time with our presidents. I mean, just think about that alone. That's big. And then you look at that in relation to the people that are maybe not allies with the US, right? That becomes kind of an interesting perspective for some of our countries. I mean, we have a lot of nuclear weapons. We are the most powerful, country in the world. And then you have all of that with the biggest position of power in your country. That's huge. I mean, that is huge. So then we have the Cold War with Russia. In the Cold War, there was no military action, but it was all of the conflict. They were just posturing, a lot of propaganda, a lot of espionage. And that really started at the end of World War II. And that went for years, till 91.
So do you think, this is another poll option that we didn't do, but the Kennedys, do you think it's JFK?
JFK, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was killed because of the moon landing?
No.
It wasn't related?
That's one of the commenters said that it's because he wanted to join forces with Russia. Yeah. That's probably part of the conspiracy theory of the Kennedys, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to talk about the Kennedys. That's going to be a great
Crazy
conversation.
how all this is related. And then flat Earth, you can clearly say it's not flat from the moon.
Well, wait, hold on. Don't go there yet. Hold up. Because I think laying this groundwork of really what was happening in the United States really kind of paints the picture of what the space race was all about and why we got into this and why it was like this race to get somebody to the moon. So 1955 to 1975, the Vietnam War, but the 60s, it was big. And we started the draft and we sent, we lost 58,000 US troops in Vietnam. Wow. 58,000 troops. This was in the 60s when we were in the middle of the space race. NASA was founded in 1958. Russia launched the Soviet satellite Sputnik, where they sent a dog, which I thought was interesting.
To the moon or to space?
Yeah, this was in to space. To space. This was in 1958. U.S. space program hadn't even been thought of. But when John F. Kennedy
made it back, right?
I don't know.
No, you joined.
One of our viewers can look that up. I did not look at that.
Well, let's just say you did.
Okay.
No, he joined the Guardians of the Galaxy.
One of them, it was either the dog or the monkey. One of them died. I can't remember which one though. Well, no, I mean, I think they shot something into space, thinking that they wouldn't even come back. I can't remember though.
Just send it empty then.
Oh, they sent a ton of things into space. I'm pretty sure we probably sent men into space that never came back.
Yes, they did. So with that, NASA was founded in 58. Kennedy took office in 60. And he made it his mission. It was his mission before the decade was done to land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. That was absolutely his his political prowess. That is what his bent. But by the mid-60s, NASA was consuming more than 4% of the U.S. federal budget. And while the Soviets were achieving more first, they had the first woman in space, the first extra vehicle activity, i.e. the spacewalk, and the Americans experienced several setbacks, including a launch pad fire that killed 3 Apollo 1 astronauts. So you have that. You're in the early 60s. And then 1963, JFK is assassinated. Like, holy cow. What does that say to Russia? Right? I mean, that's... Yeah. So then you get somebody different that's taking office. You're in the middle of the Vietnam War, and they're trying to carry out the mission of a different president. And you know that they have different agendas. A lot of racial unrest. 1967, they started the Apollo missions. And that's when those 3 astronauts were killed. And then through 1967 to 1969, they had, oh gosh, somebody help me, 7 or 8 Apollo missions. But they never landed on the moon. They just circled the moon.
The way that the Apollo missions worked is it was like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So they would test different incremental steps on the way to the moon. So they didn't ever have intentions of making it to the moon and landing on it until Apollo, I think it was supposed to be Apollo 10, but because Apollo 1 went so poorly, they obviously delayed them one try. So, the first 10 missions were supposed to, or those first 2 through 10 were just meant to take measurements and test gear and make sure that things were functioning appropriately before
like different
they tried.
Steps of what they had to
Correct.
get through.
It was a step-by-step progression. So they were building towards the Apollo landing. The Apollo 11 landing, excuse me.
The first to orbit the moon was Apollo 8 in, oops. Uh-oh. Okay, sorry. I'm just not going to do it. We're not going to play with it. Sorry. There we go.
In 1968.
So think about that for a second. 1969 is when we supposedly stepped foot on the moon.
You're not a believer.
We only orbited the moon in 1968? Really? Okay. So 1968 was also when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
It was a big year. Wow.
Right? He's the most prominent leader of the civil rights movement. He did a lot for racial segregation and, a lot of things happening in the South that have been happening and are still happening all these years. But that's huge. I mean, that's huge for this country. But then we land on the moon in 1969. So what do you guys think?
I know you said it doesn't matter what we think if we did or not, but now I'm like really curious if you guys do believe, because I want to know why you don't believe.
I won't tell you to the end.
Okay, fine. Well, shoot, it's going to be a long episode.
I think it's important to talk about.
Okay,
everything.
we can. It's the steps we're building up.
It is. We're building up. Right.
There's lots of conversation in the chat, or there's some conversation in the chat going on about NASA and like whether we believe NASA or not. And I think believing government agency is different than believing whether or not the mission occurred. I don't necessarily believe that they share everything, that they're honest about everything, but I do think that there's still some evidentiary proof that isn't maybe necessarily belonging specifically to NASA that could argue that yes, we did land on the moon.
Yeah, I think we made it there. I just think some shady shit went down to get there. And after the fact.
Well, so they spent the Apollo program's budget ended up being a total of $23.6 billion. And that was in 1973. $23.6 billion.
Yeah, today's dollars would be 468 million or something, or billion. 468 billion is what I read.
Yeah, this one says 136 billion, but I mean, either way, like
A
an
lot of
astronomical amount of money, right? So it doesn't, honestly, I think that says more to the fact that, yeah, probably did happen. Like they spent hundreds of billions of dollars to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
just
So
a crazy
let's
amount of
talk about
money.
that, because I'm really curious about NASA was not even a pinpoint on the radar in 1957. Well, maybe it was, say 1955, right? We formed this agency in 1958 because of this political pressure from the Cold War with Russia.
Well, you got to believe
now,
there were things happening though.
I'm sure
there had to have been all of these sorts of things kind of happening, and then they turned their ICBM engineering laboratories in. They say, oh well, now instead of talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles, let's use those and shoot things to the moon. So and if we're going to tell the public about it, we're going to make it public.
Wait, what's ICBM? I don't know what that is.
Intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's what the whole Cold War was kind of about, right? Like shooting nukes at each other, right?
Well, they didn't have. There was no military action between.
But there was just a lot of of military action,
propagating, and a lot of posturing, and
So
that's
in a war that's all about posturing. What is more posturing than saying, oh, well, Russia says they're going to shoot things to the moon. Yeah.
Right.
And if they're shooting things to the moon, we're shooting shit to the moon, and we're going to do it better than them. So they use every resource they possibly have and throw it at this new agency. And then they have to make it seem official because, if we're going to posture, we've got to make sure that the public knows that this is a legitimate organization. So they create NASA to back up all of that. And yeah, NASA might be hiding lots of shit. Aliens, probably. So many things.
Yeah. So Martin Luther King. Okay, so Richard Nixon takes. Let's see, when was this? Richard Nixon takes office after LBJ didn't seek re-election. Richard Nixon became elected. And then he was super scandalous. Okay, so this was during the Apollo 11 mission and then through the early part of the 70s. So the Pentagon Papers were released, which was kind of a big... That was in 1971. I know we're kind of going beyond the Apollo mission, but I think it's important. So the Department of Defense study of the U.S. political and military involvement in Vietnam from 1945 to 1967. And as the war dragged on with more than 500,000 troops in Vietnam by 1968, this analyst, Daniel Ellsberg, who had worked on this project, came to oppose the war and decided the information contained in the Pentagon Papers should be made available to the American public. So he photocopied the report and he gave it to the New York Times. So it released a lot of really interesting information that the Pentagon was not transparent about. And then shortly on the coattails of that, we had Watergate, which began in 1972. This was under the Richard Nixon administration. Several people broke into the office of the Democratic National Committee. Remember, he was Republican. This was located in the Watergate complex. They were connected to the Richard Nixon re-election campaign. They were caught wiretapping phones and stealing documents. And Nixon took aggressive steps to cover it up. Anyways, he eventually resigned. So this is just to kind of paint the picture. It was very tumultuous with the leadership in this country and the Cold War, the Vietnam War, the space race. There was a lot happening. And a lot of unrest with people. And I think with like the Watergate and the Pentagon Papers, people really started to question and not trust what was happening.
A lot of shady shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you want to jump into the conspiracy now, or do we want to talk about little known moon facts?
Let's talk about the conspiracy.
Because it's just so much fun. So, it took 400,000, this is the number that I saw, NASA employees and contractors to put Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon in 1969. But it took one man.
Have computers. It's because computers at the time were people that were doing math by hand.
Right. Gosh, what was that movie? It was so good. About the 3 Black women that worked at NASA.
Hidden Figures.
Yes. Gosh, that movie is so good. If you guys have
such a great movie. I've seen it. It's so good.
Yeah. Well worth it. But yeah, they were all doing math by hand.
Wow.
They hired these women and they were mathematicians and they were doing really complex calculations, and then they would hand it to these NASA engineers. Okay. Sorry about that sidebar. So it was only this one man named Bill Casing who decided to spread this whole idea that our landing on the moon was a hoax. And he said it began as a hunch or an intuition before turning it into a true conviction. And he says that the U.S. really lacked technical prowess to make it to the moon, or at least to the moon and back. So he was actually part of the U.S. space program, sort of. He was an employee of this company called Rocketdyne, a company that helped design the Saturn rocket engines. And then in 1976, he self-published a pamphlet called "We Never Went to the Moon: America's $30 billion Swindle."
Swindle.
That cracks me up.
What a word of the time. Swindle.
Swindle.
Did this guy mysteriously die too?
No. He's dead, but
he was old.
He was old. I think he died of old age, not from somebody. Yeah. This is interesting. So anyways, this like sparked this whole conspiracy theory that's still today, like I would say probably one of the biggest conspiracy theories. Have we been to the moon? Have we not been to the moon? In the past, you saw moon landings and there was really no way to check any of it out. You saw it on TV, the moon landing, it happened. You can talk to so many people that remember. It was such an ingrained part of their memories. Oh yeah, I remember the day like it was yesterday, and I was doing it on this day. But there was really no way to, there was no Reddit threads. There was nobody. What do you call it when the people come forward that work for these agencies? Can't think of the word.
Whistleblowers.
Yeah, whistleblowers, right? You did have whistleblowers, but people love a good conspiracy. They love it. And then they love to go figure out what it all means. And I think this day and age, with the advent of the internet, man, you can find whatever you want. You can find whatever you want to support whatever theory that you want, which I think can be a really dangerous place, honestly. Yeah. So what else?
I think, do we want to talk about the things that people think are like the reasons why the moon landing seems fake?
Yeah. So let me bring this back to our stream here. I have a couple of slides here we can look at. Hold on a second. One of them, let me see if I can get there. Hold on. Okay. Give me a second. Talk amongst yourselves. There we go. Okay. We're good. All right. So the first, some of these pictures are really hard to see, but the first theory is shadows in the moon landing photos prove the images were fake. That's one of the conspiracy theories.
Right.
So here I gathered some images that show those shadows.
Why? The shadows seem appropriate to me. Just because we can't see the sun, or?
So skeptics argue that if the sun were the only source of light, this wouldn't be the case. The fact that you can see some objects in shadow must be the result of special Hollywood lighting.
I mean, that top left one looks like the lunar module's shadow, right? And the astronaut is clearly looking in the direction of some sort of lighting source. We could assume that it would be the sun in this case. Well, because you can't see, I don't know. They all seem fine to me. I don't know.
So the problem with this, so the theory is shadows in the moon, landing photos prove the images were fake. The problem with this theory is that although the sun is the main source of illumination, remember the moon is dark, it isn't the only source. Another source is the lunar ground, which reflects the sun's light.
Right, like snow.
Yeah, so yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, but I mean, our surface reflects the sun too, and you still see shadows from the sun. So I don't understand the argument. Like, does it change your shadow because it's reflecting off the earth? I don't think so. I mean, if the greater light source is the sun, then I guess I don't understand the argument.
Well, I think maybe it's hard, I think, maybe for our brains here on Earth to go, whoa. Like it's all black behind it. So then our brains maybe go, where are they and what is that black? Right? I mean, I think when we look at it, it's.
Well, that's why it is just black though, right? You can't see stars because the sunlight is bouncing off of the surface of the moon, and it's so bright on the moon that you can't. It's like being in a city with the lights on. You can't see the stars at night, right? Because
you can't see it because of the camera, because of the f-stop. So, like, if the astronauts are brighter or highlighted, then it'll like take away the contrast of the stars.
So are you saying that this is a camera situation? Look at you coming in with your knowledge.
You have the exposure way up.
Exposure knowledge.
Because it's so dark, you have to have the lens wide open so you can get as much of the light as you can to produce the picture.
Yeah, and then that'll like distort the stars. You can't see them.
So I guess the thing I'm curious about is, so the surface of the moon, the temperature, I was really curious about the temperature of the moon. So I got to go back to my notes. It's something like 240 degrees Fahrenheit in the daytime and minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit at night.
That's extreme.
So at night, does it mean it's completely dark? The sun... Like, what is night on the moon? I'm guessing it means there's no sun. Is it like the dark side of the moon, that like the whole moon is dark? I don't know. This is where I'm like,
That's how I would imagine it, right? Because the Earth is blocking it. But sometimes you can see the moon from Earth. Well, when it's daylight.
Yeah, I just saw the moon when I walked outside about an hour ago.
Right. Yes, I saw it tonight too.
But we're seeing the moon because of the reflection of the sun off of it.
Correct. But is this daylight? I mean, is this daytime or is this nighttime?
For the side of the moon we see, yeah.
I don't know. It's the only side we see, so I have no idea. Right? Like, I don't, is the dark side of the moon always in darkness? I don't know. We don't ever see it, but does that mean that it's always in darkness?
That is true. That you only see one side of the moon. Did you know that? I thought that was an interesting. The moon always shows the Earth from Earth. It always shows Earth the same face. The moon is in a synchronous rotation with the Earth. Its near side is marked by large dark plains that fill the spaces between the bright ancient crustal highlands and the prominent crater. Whatever that means.
Christian says the moon is flat. Confirmed. We only see one side of it. Must be flat.
A lot of people are saying the dark side of the moon isn't really a dark side of the moon. It's just the side we don't see. That's why it's called the dark
Right,
side.
yeah. It's not. It's probably not always.
It's not that it's dark.
It's just we don't see it.
So it's dark to us.
All right. But daytime temperatures, what does daytime mean at the moon? Somebody who's listening to this needs to help me with this. Daytime temperatures near the lunar equator reach a boiling point of 250 degrees Fahrenheit, while nighttime temperatures get a chilly minus 208 degrees Fahrenheit. So the moon's poles, north and south, are even colder. But how do you know when it's daylight or nighttime on the moon?
You would have to walk to the dark side of the moon, right?
How do you know when it's daytime on Earth?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't see the sun, right?
You wouldn't see the sun.
So whenever, I mean, it would be whenever the moon has rotated in a way that you cannot see the sun. That is
if
nighttime.
If the
just
moon
the same as Earth.
Okay, but if the moon always shows the same face to Earth,
it's rotating at the same pace as us. I think it rotates
right
equally.
That makes sense to me. But when you're on the moon, are you seeing the same face? Do you always see the sun? Is the sun always going to be there? Like I was thinking, okay,
no,
if they landed,
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
So they plan to land at a time that the sun would reflect their activities?
That could have something to do with the 6-hour delay that they had to have also, don't you think?
That's true. Maybe it was dark when they landed.
I mean, or maybe it was like not midday or something on the moon at the time, so they wanted to wait for the perfect. Or
I think
maybe
we should bring an expert in for this one. People's brains are hurting.
If we've never been to the moon, there's no moon expert.
My brain hurts.
There's no expert. I don't think you're an expert if you've been to the moon. I mean, come on. Have you guys ever thought of that?
Oh, Jamie says there's no atmosphere to hold the heat. That makes sense to me. There is no atmosphere on the moon, so the heat that hits bounces up, but it's not trapped by an atmosphere to keep the heat in. So maybe you're not actually feeling the 250 degrees.
That's only at the equator, too. There's fluctuation from the poles to the equator, because the equator is the closest point to the sun.
I have a map of the landing spots. Apollo 11 happened pretty close to the middle.
Well, this is interesting. It takes a month for a full lunar day and night.
Oh, that's it. That is interesting.
So they just went when it was daylight for a month. Cool.
Yeah. Sweet. Now we've learned so many things tonight, you guys.
Right. Now it's all worth it. Okay, good.
Jamie's a moon expert.
You guys, seriously, I mean, what is happening? Okay, let's talk about. Do we want to move on from the moon landing photos?
Yeah. No, I fucking love it. Look at it. I mean, the flag. A lot of people don't like.
No. That's another theory. Don't go there yet. We're not going to talk about that yet. Don't talk about.
It's in the pictures.
I know. That was really supposed to be just the shadows.
Okay.
Here's one of my favorite ones. The Van Allen belts. Yeah. Then the second theory is that the astronauts could not have survived the Earth's radiation field. So I tried to grab some pictures here that show we've got the Earth, and then the two blue lines are those Van Allen belts. They're like two giant donut-shaped belts surrounding the Earth. They're made of highly energetic charged particles from the solar wind. Some people believe humans couldn't have passed through these belts without being exposed to lethal doses of radiation. What do you think?
Well, you can be exposed to lethal doses of radiation and survive, especially if you're wearing suits that keep radiation out.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, well, let me just tell you where I learned that same thing. I read that same thing on NASA's website.
Well, okay, but think about like nuclear radiation meltdowns and stuff. They send people into those. They wear radiation suits. They don't die.
They do. That's true. So this was a genuine concern before the missions, and it is the reason scientists behind Apollo 11 made sure they protected the astronauts as best they could. They insulated the spacecraft with an aluminum shell. So that doesn't sound like it's too insulating to me. And they chose a trajectory from the Earth to the moon, which minimized the amount of time spent in the Van Allen belts. And then readings from the 9 Apollo missions that reached the moon showed that astronauts' average radiation exposure was 0.46 radiation absorbed dose, so RAD. This proved NASA was right to shield the astronauts from radiation. Though it's less than the experience by some nuclear energy workers, 0.46 RAD is about 10 times more than the radiation exposure of medical professionals who routinely work with X-ray and radiotherapy machines.
You know, I wonder if this could be part of some of the lies that NASA tells also. Like, oh, we covered it in aluminum. The aluminum was fine. They made it through these belts without any issue. Maybe it wasn't aluminum that they put on these space shuttles. Maybe there was, I don't know, maybe some alien technology or something that they just haven't disclosed. There's something more to it.
Oh, sorry, not that one.
Yeah, they were moving very freaking fast, so maybe the exposure was actually much lower than anticipated. I don't know. I just feel like there's that's not the greatest explanation for me. I don't know.
How wide are these belts of radiation?
How thick are they?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, here's another image. The other image is of the Earth in the middle, and then they've got it just. Yeah, it's bigger on the outside, so I don't know where their planned route was and how.
Yeah.
So this is
there also could be environmental factors that maybe that those Van Allen belts are thinner at certain times of the day. Like if they're in direct line with the sun, maybe they thin. I don't know how anything works, so I'm just bullshitting randomness. But
this is what made me like not believe that we made it there when I first heard about the radiation belts. But then I watched the documentary on the Discovery Plus that talked about, they did a study of what they were wearing and how long they were exposed to the amount of radiation, and it showed the radiation damage that they would have had, and it like debunked it.
So yeah, I need like a physicist to explain this to me, because if you think about where we've come with modern medicine and radiation, and even the last 30 years, I mean, you could take a spot on the human body that was like this big and get about like that close for radiation like 30 years ago. Now they can get it the size of the head of a pin, right? So we're talking 1969 when they went through these Van Allen belts, no matter how fast the exposure.
Well, they were going 17,000 miles per hour.
Yeah, that's why
17,500 miles per hour. And I mean, radiation exposure, it, like Jamie said, is measured in units per hour. So if they're just shooting straight through it as fast as they possibly can, maybe the radiation exposure was actually very minimal. I don't know. I would have to have somebody do the math, right? Like,
Jesse's got it figured out.
They just paid the toll for the belt. So
good.
I know Jamie Landis. I think we need to be best friends because they know everything. I mean, just spouting all sorts of stuff that makes total sense to me.
One time, yeah. So they weren't exposed for that long.
Jamie must teach physics. We need a physics lesson. Well, I don't know. Do we know how? I mean, if they're going 17,500 miles an hour, how, like Mr. Movie said, how far apart are those belts, and how much time did they spend in the belts?
Not long enough to die.
Time. Yeah, they all lived really old.
But yeah, Buzz Aldrin's still kicking, and that guy's like 90 something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we talked about this the other day. I thought he died.
All right. Well, debunked.
Well, maybe. I mean, I would need more calculations explanation to say whether or not. I mean, it's a valid argument for sure, because radiation exposure would be difficult, but I don't know the math to be able to calculate exactly what that exposure would look like. So.
Okay.
Moving on.
Yeah, let's go back to. Oh, sorry. Why are there no stars in pictures of the NASA moon landings?
Because of the f-stop that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Camera settings.
Right there, that shutter speed.
Shutter speed and f-stop.
You just simply can't focus on that many things at the same, right? That many lighted things at the same time.
Right. If you were to focus on the stars, then the astronauts would be dark.
Dark.
Kind of like when you... I'm trying to explain an example, but I can't think of it. Like when you're taking a picture of the moon at night, the moon will be highlighted, but you won't be able to see the stars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we're moving on. Okay. No, we're good. We can move on.
I mean, I also think that you maybe can't see the stars that well from the moon because the moon's surface is so brightly lit, right? So your eye exposure,
so one of the
eye
theories,
is overexposed.
Yeah, I heard is that there are no stars in the lunar sky. I don't know what that means. Does anybody else?
That's what it means. It means that the surface of the lunar surface is so bright that you can't see the stars that are there because all you can see is the brightness from the surface.
Yeah. Think about when it's daytime here. Can you see the stars?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
If we didn't have an atmosphere, it would be black, not blue.
Yes,
Yeah,
if we didn't have an atmosphere, it would be black. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Did you know that, Kim?
If we didn't have what?
An atmosphere that from Earth it would look just like that. It'd be black, a black sky.
Oh, because it wouldn't reflect like the blue of the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's cool. I'm glad we have an atmosphere.
I didn't figure you knew that, and I knew that you would be really excited by that. I don't know why.
We've got a chatty chat over here. I'm trying to multitask.
Should we chat about what's chatty in the chat?
Yeah, let's. Milner's always got something.
Conspiracy as no stars means it was filmed on a soundstage, but the people that believe that fail to take into account the quick shutter speed to take the photos to avoid overexposure.
Exactly.
Honestly, I feel like if it was filmed on a soundstage, it would have stars, right? Because
Right.
they would
Why?
obviously because they wouldn't know that
They just fill it in.
it would be overexposed. So
I mean-
they'd be like, "Oh, we got to put stars in this sky to make it look real."
People are also like questioning if Kubrick's the one that filmed it. That guy was an amazing filmmaker.
Oh, Stanley Kubrick. Is
Yeah.
that the
If
the
he
conspiracy
faked it,
theory
you
that Stanley
wouldn't-
Kubrick's the one
There
that
wouldn't
filmed it?
be evidence that it was faked. Like, that guy knew how to do it. Because as much as we know about cameras, he knows more things than we'll ever know.
Yeah.
That guy was one of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
All right.
This is hilarious.
I hear you, Cleon.
No kidding. Let's get to the point here, folks.
So you were excited about this part, Haas.
The flag.
The flag.
Yeah.
Oh, the flag?
I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Oh, I wasn't necessarily excited about it. I just
You were
Yeah.
freezing until this moment to talk about it. So
think it's really hokey. You know, like, let's think about how we're going to take a flag to the moon and then put all these different supports in it to make sure that it looks like it's flying. I just think it's dumb.
Well, that it was for optics, right?
I
So
know.
they put the extra support in the top so that you
Right.
could see that it was the American flag. Because if it wasn't there, it would just be hanging down.
Yeah.
And the optics of the American flag and the optics of freedom in our country is that waving American flag. And if you can't see it, then it's not as optically pleasing.
It's more of a statement. I remember it's more of a what?
It's more of like an FU statement to me, like to the Soviets, right? Like, FU, check out this flag here, right? That's proof. Our flag's flying.
I'm curious that the lunar surface, do you really think they were able to get the flag to stand? They just stuck it in there and look how straight it is. When I stick anything in like dust or
it's like, leaning in the right picture. It's not perfectly straight. Also, these guys are freaking like, engineers. So
they probably had a hammer and just staked it in there.
Engineers have a tendency to do things like very well.
Do you think the flag is still there?
I've read a couple of things. There was somebody at the University of Arizona that I think a professor down there that says that it's not likely. You know what I really was hoping to find was like a lunar camera.
Like a lunar, like from the lunar rover?
Yes. Haven't found one.
I don't know that there's any that like NASA provides, but India and China have been doing moon missions the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they have images on the moon as well that you can like see on, not that you can trust Chinese government or Indian government either, but like if you're wanting to confirm that it's not just our government trying to like pretend, the Chinese and the Indians both have imagery shot from the moon with their rovers.
So let's talk a little bit about what countries have been to the moon. The United States, the Soviet Union, Japan, the European Space Agency, China, India, Luxembourg. I didn't know that was a country. Luxembourg?
It's actually just a city.
Yeah. Israel, Italy, South Korea, and the United Arab Emirates. However, the United States is the only country to have successfully conducted crewed missions to the moon. That's a little sus.
I honestly think this is a money and weighed risk situation.
How did Luxembourg do it, though?
Why?
I was like, somebody threw that in.
Luxembourg is like a European city-state.
I know.
There's only 600,000 people there.
That must have been a typo. That cracks me up.
Based on the things that you can collect with rovers and all of the, what are they called? The things that fly around. Drones, right? Like you can get so much with robots and drones, unmanned vehicles and things like that now. Why would you risk sending human bodies somewhere where you can collect everything you need using a robot?
Why would we go there in the first place?
Honestly, it was just like a big dick measurement. It had to have been. I mean, I think that's the only reason we went. It was a big dick measurement, just to say we can do it. We did it. You can't. I honestly think that's the only reason why.
It was we can wave our flag higher. Well, and to show that we are the most powerful country. You never want to let your guard down and let anybody think that we don't have the most powerful weapons and that
it was a strategy thing. Yes, absolutely.
Strategy.
Had nothing to do with actually needing to go to the moon for anything. It was just like, we need to prove that we're the best at everything. So let's do it.
And we had Neil Armstrong.
And what about?
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
And Buzz Aldrin.
And Buzz, sorry.
And the guy that stayed in the module.
So they supposedly put 12 people on the moon. The last manned lunar mission was in December of 1972.
Yeah, that was the last of the Apollo missions.
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, how about this?
There were ancient structures there that were millions of years old, but they're still are today, and we wanted to see. I mean, could be. Yeah, I mean, could be, I guess. Could be. They just didn't film that part. Is that what you're saying?
What, wasn't it on the dark side of the moon? Wasn't all that stuff on the dark side?
Yeah.
Isn't
That's
that
right.
where,
They went to the dark side. They just didn't share that part.
Isn't that where
Well, they
Carl
orbited the
Wolf
moon.
from?
Of course, they went by the dark side of the moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've orbited the
Oh,
moon
yeah.
multiple times.
Yep.
What do we know
They
about
had to. That was
Carl?
part of their flight pattern. They used the moon's gravitational field to kind of like slingshot them back into Earth to help slingshot them
Shadow
back, I
vessel.
believe.
Carl Wolf was mysteriously killed by a car before he was supposed to testify to Congress about the structures on the moon.
That was interesting.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, Matt says if cool stuff was there, more countries would be sending people. There's just nothing that cool on the moon.
You don't think there's alien stuff there?
I mean, maybe remnants of aliens, and you know, maybe these people are right. Maybe there's
Well,
city
there's
structures.
water on
I
the
think
moon,
it's
so there's life on the. I mean, there's life on the moon, right? I mean, there's water.
yeah.
There's water there, so.
Given the temperatures, though, they would not be it would not be human life. So it would be some sort of either alien species or people living under the surface.
In the moon.
The hollow moon. Ooh, the hollow moon.
Did you guys read anything about UFOs there?
Oh, are people just talking about like the Google, basically Google Earth, Google Moon?
Oh, yeah, they must be.
Those are just glitches.
Glitches in the Google Earth, potentially.
I mean, you can
Why?
find
What are we talking about?
Maybe.
I want to see
the
it.
Tower of Babel.
under the water,
They
too.
keep mentioning the Tower of Babel. There's a tower that's 5 miles high on the surface of the moon.
Yeah.
Can you
But
bring it
there's
up,
just, like-
Mr. Movies?
Yeah, I'm trying to find. Hold on a second.
While he's doing that, let's talk about the moon. Oh,
This part?
yeah, we can talk about this part. This was one of the other theories. If the moon landing is fake because you can't see Armstrong's camera in this picture. This one kind of baffled me. I'm like, huh?
Because he's taking a selfie. Is that what we're saying?
Well, I think our minds are maybe used to that, right?
Yeah.
But you can't see it. So this is Aldrin, and you can't see it reflected in his visor. But he actually has it mounted to his chest. The picture. So it's not like they have a GoPro. It's not like they have a selfie. They're not taking a selfie, right?
He's taking it from here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So
Is that why you can't see
You just
it?
can't see it. Yeah.
I think it might be that little white module thing on the center of his chest.
Yeah, that could be.
So,
Yeah, the camera he used on the moon was mounted on the front of his suit, which is where his hands are in the reflection.
So it's probably there. You just can't see it. Also, it's a really small reflection, but that could just be this picture.
So
that's all?
the other one is about Stanley Kubrick, and it's fake because he filmed it, and he was a pioneer filmmaker, and that this was all created on a soundstage. What do you guys think about that?
The one thing that like I heard that they like faked the anti-gravity situation, and I heard somebody debunk it saying there is not in existence a large enough space to create a soundstage that is also anti-gravitational, although you could fake that with like strings and stuff, I guess. So I don't know that that's the best like debunk ever, but that the anti-gravity machines that NASA uses to test their to test the astronauts before they go are like huge buildings just to make a little tiny like
wow
structure to fit just large enough to fit the astronaut in to test them for anti-gravitational stuff. Like the only way you can create that is by going a certain amount of speed in the high atmosphere levels.
Did you learn this from your resident?
From that docu series the resident expert that I had I consulted with said that I said, if you like had an explanation as that would debunk that you would use as your explanation as to why it's not a hoax. She said that she just knows a lot of people working on what would have to have been fake engineering if it was all faked. And that they're still using Apollo mission data for rocket design today. And that the math works. So, and she is currently working on rocket engineering for Blue Origin. So,
right, like, is there anybody? There's not people that were involved that said that it didn't happen, right?
There is like one clip of old Buzz Aldrin that where I think it's just kind of taken more out of context than anything. I think he just misspoke. Because he then, like, in the same sentence, he is talking about how he doesn't understand why we haven't gone back to the moon. He interpreted the question as, why haven't we gone back to the moon? Or she asked the question, why haven't we gone back to the moon? And he said, I don't know why we haven't been to the moon. He meant, I don't know why we haven't been back to the moon. But
he said, like, something about, like, I have the same question.
Yeah, he said, I have the same question. Why haven't we been to the moon? He's just old. And misspoke, I think,
he meant going back.
Came down to. Yeah, I think so.
Since. He forgot the word since.
You know, I wonder, were they ever used in any other missions, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong? Yeah. They were after the Apollo?
Yeah, I think they rotated. I don't know. I know that Neil Armstrong was used in a mission prior to Apollo 11. I don't know if he was used again after that. And same with Buzz. I believe he was used in a mission prior to Apollo 11. I don't know if he was used again after that.
See, that seems a little, like, why? If you're, like, why not?
Because there were quite a few people in that Apollo mission. I think it was more of like a, hey, everybody deserves a chance to maybe fly to the moon. Like, you had your opportunity. We've got like 8 other astronauts that really want to go. I don't know.
Yeah, giving somebody else a chance, maybe. I don't know. It seems so. That seems a little suspect to me.
But if there were so many people involved, like, you would think that somebody would say that it didn't.
No, not necessarily, because...
Well, also, if you're saying that the radiation exposure is so high, you wouldn't want to send the person back into space like dozens of times to run the same mission, because their radiation exposure would become way too much. If we're saying they can shoot through the belt 1 or 2 times and be okay, right, back and forth, and maybe not have so much radiation exposure that they're debilitated. But, sending them back through a few more times could be the carrot. So I feel like that's an argument for and against.
Yeah. This is actually kind of cool.
Well,
I never really thought about that part.
Buzz Lightyear named after him?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah. Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story was named after him. Sure. I think, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Are you ready, Mr. Movies?
Oh, for the, yeah.
Was
so the
I
tower.
something?
Here's the pictures of the tower.
Are we looking at it from above?
So that's a cold spot then, if it's white.
Well, here's the thing: is you can see a layer right here.
Yeah.
So what this is just imaging on top of imaging. And when it doesn't line up, you can see the lines, right? Because you're taking a picture, you're taking another picture, and you're trying to piece them. It's like a puzzle, putting it all together.
So you're saying the satellite was taking pictures. It took 2 pictures,
and
then
tried to line it up as best they could.
They tried to overlay them together.
Glitches, like I see them all the time in video games too. When you're putting geographical things together in 3D and stuff, there's just little spikes and stuff that don't make sense.
It does kind of look like a mushroom, like they said, though.
I don't know what we're looking at, though. Are we looking at it from above?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and that black thing is like a
rod.
Like the 20.
So they're saying this is from a NASA picture, and this is from the Google Moon.
This is the Tower of Babylon.
This is supposed to be one of the towers.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I think what this is a crater, and this is like the impact point. That's where the comet came from, right?
Where it slid in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Keep in mind you're stitching together curved spaces. That's a good comment.
Yeah.
It's a space nipple.
Somebody said maybe they didn't have the astronauts go back because they wanted to compartmentalize the astronauts' knowledge. They didn't want them to know too much about too much. It's an interesting theory. If there is like a... Yeah, I mean...
If you're going...
Fair. That's fair.
If you're going to put them in outer space... I think it's the work on the ground that you would compartmentalize things. That would be my opinion. Oh, this is interesting.
That's just what those towers look like, and that's just
so. This is like
from
instead of a crater down into the moon, this is going out of the moon. That would be my perception of that.
Yeah, it's just maybe that's what the lunar surface, the height of the whole lunar surface used to be before it got pelted by a bunch of rocks, right?
Yeah, I think that's just a glitch.
A glitch in the
imaging.
In the imagery.
Yeah. It's all code.
So one of the things that came back after they did their moon landing is that the moon soil is extremely clingy and hard to brush off. When Armstrong and Aldrin returned the lunar module and repressurized it, the lunar dirt that had clung to the men's suits entered the cabin and began to emit an odor. They said it had a burned smell like wet fireplace ashes, like after a fireworks show. So scientists would never get the chance to investigate it, just what the crew was smelling, because while moon soil and rock samples were sent to labs in sealed containers, once they were opened back on Earth, the smell was gone.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting.
Smell of the moon remained on the moon.
So it's probably ashy. Well, and if you think about it, ash kind of is clingy like that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You touch ash and it kind of gets...
Yeah.
It does, yeah. You're right.
Clings to everything. So I wonder if it's, made of similar components.
I thought this
module probably smelled like socks and swamp ass. Definitely.
Oh my gosh,
smelled like socks and swamp ass. Yeah.
Oh my god. It's not a huge space in there either. You know, I read something. This was something that I thought was just crazy. I read it and I thought, no way. They left a lot of things behind on the moon, but one of the things they said they left behind was bags of urine and feces. Did you guys read that or hear that?
Wait, what did you say?
But
I thought it was weird. So they could make up for the space and weight of the samples of the moon they were bringing back. They offloaded.
They ditched their excrement. Yeah, that makes sense though. I mean, if you're dealing with
crazy
ounces, right? You can only take ounces with you, and you already have ounces that you've created. You kind of have to.
I'm sure they didn't have that much on there though, right?
It's like we're just gonna
probably not. Probably not. Also, I mean, and like, where else would they get rid of it? They can't take it back with them. That'd be weird too.
I heard the meal that they had before they left was like a low something meal that wouldn't make them
poop.
Low fiber, or a low fiber meal.
No high fiber. Yes, no high fiber.
Taking a dump on the moon. Nice.
Here's another thing I thought was really interesting. So they were worried before they left about space germs infecting Earth. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Space germ,
Oh,
right?
gosh. Have you seen that fucking movie? Don't watch it. Don't ever watch that movie. It's horrifying. What is that movie? Life? Is that what it's called?
Oh, Life? Or what? The moon movie we watched?
The one where they bring in the sample of something and then it turns... So yeah, that's exactly what I would be afraid of. I would be afraid of bringing whatever is out there back with me. Whew, no thanks.
Yeah, so they had to be put into quarantine when they came back. Since nobody had been to the moon, they were sure that they had brought back some sort of deadly pathogen.
Well, you don't know, right?
What's
out there? We don't know.
So they spent, I think, 2-3 weeks in a quarantine facility. 2 weeks, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. Everything seemed to be fine, though. So
you don't recommend us watching Life?
No, you should, Kim.
It's terrifying. If you don't like scary things, don't watch it. If you like scary things, then you're fine.
I like scary things when I'm out alone in the dark.
Don't watch it tonight. Don't watch it tonight.
Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal are in it.
Oh, really?
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's just horrifying. Space STDs.
Oh. So we kind of talked about this, but a person weighs much less on the moon. So it has much weaker gravity than Earth due to its smaller mass. So you would weigh about 16.5% of your weight on Earth. That's why they could leap and bound so high in the air.
Wow. It did look really fun.
That would be an experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So the composition of the moon's atmosphere presents a mystery of its own. It's made up of argon, helium, neon, sodium, polonium, potassium, and radon. However, scientists still debate why it does not have oxygen and nitrogen like other atmospheres. So is that why they had to be all suited up? Not because of the temp, but because there's no oxygen?
Both, I think.
Both, I would think, too.
Yeah.
So strangely enough, the moon's crust has both of these elements along with magnesium, hydrogen, and carbon. Until now, scientists have not figured out why these elements are present on its surface, but not in its atmosphere. Ooh, that's weird.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
This does just make you think about how small we really are down here on Earth.
Mm-hmm. One of the little known facts about the moon is that it has a magnetic field. It is very weak compared to the Earth. The moon's magnetic field measures less than 0.2, somebody help me, NT. I don't know what that stands for. Whereas the Earth's magnetic field averages 45,000 NT. Amazingly, evidence collected from manned missions to the moon shows that the ancient moon had a magnetic field stronger than that of the Earth. Because of these findings, scientists believe that the moon's core cooled and solidified. The field weakened until it reached the current level.
That's interesting. I wonder if all of the atmosphere changes happened at the same sort of time, right? Like something about this moon. Like it wasn't maybe a moon before and it just got stuck with us and then became our moon. like maybe it was a planet at one point in time and then it had a catastrophic event and then it just ended up getting stuck in our rotation and now it's our moon.
Yeah, that's interesting. Gosh, what would it be like if we didn't have the moon?
We wouldn't have waves.
That's true. We wouldn't have the tides. The moon affects the tides.
I'm not sure how that works, but
I think we need to do a whole
gravitational pull. I don't know how it works either.
We need to bring an expert in for all that.
I did jump down a Mars rabbit hole as I was doing research on the moons. I found Mars the missions to Mars much more interesting, just because the moon's not producing much, But I did read at some point that it would make sense to if we're going to plan to try and terraform Mars, it would make sense to try and terraform the moon as well, because it's a good stopping place part way on your way to the moon. So almost a resupply sort of situation. So I feel there is some validity for maybe trying to go back to the moon at some point in time.
That's a little pit stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Gas up. Get some snacks.
Like a fill station. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, you'd have to deal with the temperatures, the atmosphere, the lack of gravity. I mean, you'd have to.
So maybe I guess it's easier to just have a space station where you use as a pit stop than that's orbiting in space. Maybe that's why they.
Unless you wanted to inhabit the moon.
Right.
Right. If you wanted to build your little tiny house on the moon.
I do think it's interesting that people are much more interested in inhabiting Mars than the moon. And we already know that the moon has water, which means it has oxygen available in some form. So I do find that interesting.
Why do you think they want to
I think the reason we don't want to be a mesa... I think the reason we don't want to base on the moon is we don't want to mine the moon, because that would affect the mass. And we have such a connection.
We're afraid of messing with its mass.
How much it would mess.
That makes sense.
You mean what it would do to Earth?
Of the moon.
Yeah.
That
because we are so interconnected to it. Yeah, because
That's just what I've been thinking about.
I wouldn't want to mess with
an
it.
interesting thought.
Cool.
Mars, we can mess with Mars. It's
on its own over there. We probably
got its
won't
own
hurt
atmosphere. It has blue skies.
Also, Mars has an atmosphere and all that, and it's safer technically than the moon
because it has an atmosphere made of better chemicals,
less radiation, more stable temperatures.
So, how far away is Mars from Earth?
Very, very far.
Depends on the time
compared to the moon.
It takes something like 4 years to get to Mars or something. Yeah. So you think 4 days is a lot? Nope.
Yeah, I remember when they launched that rover, and then I'd kind of forgotten about it, and then it became news again when it reached Mars, and I was like,
"Oh shit, that was like 5 years
ago." 220 million miles.
Wow.
To get to Mars.
And wow, how fast were they going?
But you have to have the infrastructure in place to get there as well, right? So you have to be able to refuel because you're burning a ton of fuel to get to space anyways, and then to shoot all the way to Mars, you'll have to make a pit stop, like we talked about.
You're right, the moon.
But again, maybe if you're just using it for refueling, there's more efficient ways to refuel in space than having to land on a surface.
A space station where you don't have to worry about gravity is better than a moon base.
I would. I would be a great command center boss. I would encourage people, if they haven't seen that docuseries on Apollo 11, to go check it out. It's really interesting. And there is a moment where they play a lot of the audio that the command center had. And there's a moment in the lunar module landing where the computers on board glitch, and they have an error code that they had never practiced for.
Yeah.
And for a split second you can kind of hear something in Neil Armstrong's voice, because he is realizing that, okay, I'm going to be having to land this thing by myself, manually. The computer's not helping me anymore. thought that was a pretty interesting moment for me.
And if you're not a believer, you should go watch the documentary series on the Discovery Plus about all the conspiracy theories that are debunked.
I don't know what that one said, but I just think I still can't believe, I mean, assuming we made it to the moon, right? Assuming we made it to the moon. It's bonkers, the amount of computation and math and engineering and resources that were devoted to making it happen at that time. Like that many billions of dollars, that many hundreds, thousands of people, like crazy amounts of effort. Pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, for what?
Right, just big dick energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or what? I mean, let's be real. I think the biggest thing for me is, why have we not been back?
Money and I think
interest,
honestly,
money and interest are not good enough for me. Why have we not been back? Why was there such an interest before?
Space wars.
Mm-hmm.
I think because we've already been to the moon, so the next step is Mars, and we just gotta
another big dick move, right? Like, yeah, make it to Mars next.
If we're sending somebody to Mars, they're probably gonna stay there.
Yeah, so I don't know how you get back from that.
Gotta give them enough resources to be able to live.
Hi, honey. I'm taking a 8-year hiatus. We'll see you back in 10 years.
Or never. Or never, right? Like, how do you get back from Mars? There's no fuel there. You're only going to be able to carry enough fuel to get you to a fueling station that's going to get you enough fuel to get you to Mars. It's kind of scary. But that's what lots of these private industry, like Blue Origin and SpaceX, they're all kind of... Blue Origin's whole thing that's their whole goal, is to get to Mars and make it inhabitable or some shit like that. It's crazy.
I think Jamie Landis has a good point. We got sidetracked with the space shuttle. Because at that point, we invented the International Space Station. I think we realized that having a base on the moon isn't as resource friendly as having just a space station base. And so if we can get a space shuttle going where we can transport people in and out of the atmosphere to a space station and then build up that space station's resources. Once we advance the technology more, that space station will be a better launching point for interspatial travel than launching off a moon. So,
Mr. Movies, will you put up a
priorities
poll?
Of what?
Do you think we've been to the moon? I want to know what our audience says.
I already have that.
Well, then tell us what the fucking results are, dude.
77% say yes right now.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
That's with 35 votes.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think Jamie's right. Like, we really pushed our luck with the existing technology at the time to even try it, and assuming we got there to get there. Like, it was...
That is kind of where I stopped I made a full stop when I was doing the deep dive on this. Was the previous Apollo missions were just set, to showcase our big muscles and really show Russia that we're working on something. And they were orbiting the moon. But then the first orbit of the moon was in 1968. And then, bam, what? Not even a year later, we're on the moon? That was like full stop.
Oh, you think that it was too fast?
Too fast. I don't.
How many years? How many
enough.
years from the start of Apollo to to 1968?
That's a good
Maybe
question.
that was their goal:
65?
is one mission every year.
I don't know when Apollo. Let me look.
I probably have it here too. Just dummy that's not looking.
1961, but the first crewed flight was 1968.
Yes, because they kind of had to take maybe we're not quite ready yet after they killed 3 astronauts.
Yeah, so that was in 1967. They took their first crewed flight in 1968. And then they decided we're ready to put people on the moon in 1969. That's where I was.
Well, it's like Apollo 13, the movie, right? They never get to the moon. I think once they got the spaceship out of the atmosphere, the goal was just to get it around the moon anyways, so that you could get it back.
Right. So once they could prove that they
slingshot around,
could orbit
right.
Then...
So once you got out, like the first couple missions were just getting out of the atmosphere.
Yes.
And then after that, like, okay, now we're going to go straight up and towards the moon and then slingshot around. So.
Yeah, but she's saying that the timeline between just like, well, but you can't test it really. I mean, we have to assume that the lunar module, they were trying to test it as well as they could on Earth in some sort of fashion, but they were probably doing that from the beginning, right?
And relying on a lot of mathematical equations. If you YouTube when they go to do the launch with the lunar module, it is so specific because it launches like on its side and then it for a certain amount of time and then it has to come down like this. And that's all a mathematical equation. They didn't do a test run of that.
Right.
Yeah,
because you can't create those conditions on Earth. So I think to me if they can verify to themselves, no, we can shoot around the moon, that's what we need to do in order to get back, like, well, we just kind of got to give it a good old college try, And
NASA was founded
and hope for the best, which is so ballsy. I mean, you're
right.
Human lives and you're just like, well, let's give it a shot. We have no idea if it's going to work this way, but based on the math, it should. And their math was really fucking good. I mean, for humans, really fucking good math.
It was really risky. They lost 3 people on the launch pad because of too much oxygen. I mean, that is really risky if you think about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Warslave says NASA's been caught passing off fake moon rocks. Of course they're giving out fake moon rocks.
They can't give them actual moon rocks
out.
They're
not going to give them actual real moon rocks. Those are valuable. They got to go to the moon if they want to get their own.
Yeah, do it yourself. We risked a lot getting people there.
Moon rock.
They have at the U.S. Space and Naval. It's in Washington D.C. Air flight.
Oh yeah, aeronautical.
Yeah. They say that I saw it. It's a chunk from the moon, but it looks like it's more like a chunk from the lunar rover than it does the moon. Because I would imagine it's more like really crumbly, pieces from the moon. Maybe not. I don't know. They brought back a lot of samples. I've never seen it, but
I mean, just think of airplanes in general, right? The Wright brothers was in 1902.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first commercial air flight was 1914.
Mm-hmm. You think you're saying that's a short amount of time?
10 years. That's 10 years. And NASA was formed in 1958, and we...
Oh, 10 years from the very first plane that was ever created, right?
Yeah.
To a commercial airline flight. It was 10 years.
And then NASA was formed in 1958, and we left the planet in 1968. So 10 years seems like when you're trying real hard. It's probably
well, you have to remember, though, NASA was getting things into space. Getting to the moon was a whole nother conversation. Right. They knew they wanted to do this under the direction of JFK at the beginning of the 60s, right? They knew that this was the political slant they were going to take. Getting to space is one thing. Getting to the moon is a whole different story.
Yeah, it's just going through more space.
Honestly, it just takes more money, right? You throw hundreds of billions of dollars at it and like thousands more brains. Good math and money will solve all the world's problems.
Just a little bit more fuel.
That's true. That's very
true. Once you're out in space, it's probably pretty easy.
And they hired, I don't know if I should, didn't they hire Nazis?
Oh, yeah, for lots of things, though.
Some lady said that if we didn't have them, then we wouldn't have made it there.
Yes, possibility. I think they did take some of the leading scientists and engineers.
Yeah, a lot of the Nazi rockets were ahead of their time.
I don't know. Okay, so
Matt says, I think leaving Earth was the hardest thing to figure out, really. How to get through our atmosphere.
Yes.
So once they figured that out in the 50s, then maybe, going to the moon was just like, we just need a way to hold more gas, right?
It was pretty technical, though, if you think about it. Because you still had to have, you had the rover land, but then have the command module still circulate. And then, figure out how to get them back
on it. Oh, yeah, that was a shot in the dark. I mean, it was, I just can't believe it even happened. I mean, I do believe it happened. Kim, I'm answering your question. I do believe that the moon landing happened.
Okay.
It is still unfathomable how they did it, though, because it was just luck. I think it was just good math and lots of prayers.
And good astronaut.
Hope this goes well.
Neil,
really
Buzz,
good,
and the other guy.
really good pilots. I mean, really good pilots that did very, knew how to hold
their
under composure under pressure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, let's see here.
I feel like it's a clue game. We're revealing what we think. Who's the murderer?
Wow, this went dark really fast.
Mr. Mustard in the kitchen. With the
I want to know, Berly, what you think about the moon landing.
At first, I was very skeptical. I'm also really big into conspiracies. I like to question things. But then, as I got the facts through my research, and they kept debunking things.
Facts are subjective. Let's remind everybody of that. Facts are subjective. So
I guess when they did the science behind it.
Also, what is science?
I don't know.
I know this is why it's such a hard conversation to have, though, right? Because all of it is very subjective.
What I liked is what I watched.
Except for the math part. I don't think that's subjective. I think that's maybe the solidifying factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked about what I watched was there was 3 guys, and they all had different perspectives and different beliefs about it. Yeah. And after all their research and after everything that they went through, they all came to the same conclusion that we did make it to the moon. So I think we made it. Just some shady shit, like I said. And there's definitely aliens on there.
Oh, Milner has an interesting comment. We also slammed a craft into the moon, which NASA officials said the moon rang like a bell for hours, indicating it's hollow. Oh. I don't know if that's a fact. I don't know if that's something he's read or heard.
We need to fact check that one.
That movie Moonfall is all about how the moon's hollow and it's a structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting movie.
There's a lot of people that don't believe the moon exists.
That it's just like a hologram or something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I've seen Truman Show way too many times.
Mr. Movies, do you believe we landed on the moon?
Yeah.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
Michael Collins is the 3rd man that went to the moon.
Yeah, he was the one running the lunar module. He never stepped foot on the moon, though.
Right, but everybody forgets his name, so we need to give him his name.
Michael Collins, good dude. He honestly, he made a pretty big sacrifice, didn't he? Being like, yeah, I'll stay here. Good luck, you guys.
Yeah, I'll orbit
Take
this
a lap
for you
around the parking lot.
Yeah, yeah, really.
I do believe that we've made laps around the moon, but I do not believe we've set foot on the moon.
It's hard to prove one way or another, really.
Yeah.
Wait, but what about the stuff that we left on the moon?
You can see it with the telescope.
No, you can't.
No, you can't.
But
Powerful enough telescope.
No, you can't. You can only see it from...
There's pictures from the Earth of the
No, there's not. Yes, of the landing sites, but not the material left behind. You can only see it from the...
satellites.
From orbiting the Earth. Yes, from satellites that orbit.
So if we orbit it, you would be able to see that we left stuff there.
Yes, there are things that you can see in the pictures. You can't make out what they are just because the imagery is not great. But
I really want to know if the dark side of the moon is really cylindrical, or if it's just
or if maybe it is like a flat Earth sort of situation.
Yeah. It's the dark side. We don't see it.
But they
and when you orbit it, do you orbit or like? Yeah, I don't know.
I think I think they orbit around the dark side of the moon.
They do. Okay.
To slingshot
well, it would
back.
make sense.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if...
Because otherwise you'd be orbiting up and over and you'd be going perpendicular to the Earth, not...
Right.
Yeah, Michael said it wasn't pleasant on the other side, the dark side of the moon.
What? Oh, it wasn't pleasant on the dark side of the moon?
Yeah, he said it wasn't very pleasant on that side of the moon.
I imagine it'd be very kind of creepy, right?
Yeah.
Really dark. No life. In theory.
Where all the aliens live.
Yeah.
Right. Right. He's probably just waiting for an alien to pop out.
Yeah, I bet he was. But he was like, what's out there?
Actually,
am I going to see anything?
Actually, they in some of their audio clips from when they were orbiting the moon, they said they saw things, which I don't know.
I'm sure they did, though.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine the things you'd see in space? Like the things you wouldn't know what they exactly were. Yeah.
Oh goodness, this was a fun episode.
Mr. Movies, what do you believe?
I'm having deja vu.
Really?
I already answered.
That he believes. We've been there.
Wait, you did?
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what this means. You should
Sorry,
look
I'm
up
not
the
listening.
lunar wave phenomenon, which happens around March and April time of the year, and it is ripples that follow each other around the moon. Like it's refreshing the image. Oh, interesting. I've never heard of that. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to highlight that one. I didn't mean to highlight it. He was playing with the freaking mouse at the same time.
Okay, well,
unhighlight
that's funny.
Cleon.
You guys are funny.
I can't find anything on that. Wave.
Lots of weird stuff. Is there anything we haven't addressed that we should look at?
Oh, Jackal says flat Earth backwards is the spelling of it backwards. Type that in a Google search box and the first result is a NASA webpage.
Ooh.
That's interesting.
Jackal is obsessed with flat Earth.
With flat Earth, yeah. Honestly, Jackal, I thought flat Earth was going to win. I was certain that flat Earth was going to win the poll. And it didn't.
Know you
it didn't
voted
even
for it. No, it didn't even come
It didn't
close.
even come close. No. It wasn't even in the top 3.
I can't find anything on that.
But Jackal, like, what's on the backside of it?
The astronauts had no communication when they were on the backside of the moon, so I'm sure it was a very scary sort of situation.
Wait, what do you
right?
mean they didn't have communication? Really?
Their radios didn't work because the moon was in the way.
Oh.
They didn't have a line of sight to Earth.
Oh.
So all communications were black as well.
That's just weird, you guys. I don't know. That kind of
Well, you might...
Now we have satellites all over
Yeah,
the place,
I know.
so
that
it's
might be
impossible.
different now because we have so many satellites in the air or in space. But back then...
Just gotta worry about running into one of them.
It's like driving down a dark road and just like, oh, get me there. Turn on my brights.
Yeah.
Go faster.
Yeah, when everything around you is dark at night. Yeah.
And something's just.
It turns out the moon mission was all about the friends they made along the way.
Aw, cute. That's a happy ending.
Thanks, Galaxian. That's so sweet.
And here's why we never went, because why we never have been back, because we never went. Oh,
That's
boy.
funny.
I think it's fair to say the chat feels that the majority of the chat feels that the moon landing was not faked, but there was still 33% that feel like it was faked.
It was like 23.
23%
that
feel like it was faked.
You gotta factor in the meme vote, which is like 10 to 20%. People just voting
because
the ridiculous answer just for fun.
I think it's, I don't know, my opinion of it is kind of like my opinion of flat earth. Like, there's compelling evidence in the direction of it not ever happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's also compelling evidence showing that it did. So it's just, I think, a personal opinion at this point. And I am sure every physicist and astronaut, aeronautical engineer, whatever, would disagree that there's hard facts that it actually did happen.
All right, I did another poll. What's your favorite moon movie? Apollo 13 won with 70%. Moon with Sam Rockwell got 12, and Apollo 18 got 12%. Ad Astra 4%.
What's Apollo 18?
You don't want to watch that one.
No, it's scary.
Yeah, that's why we never went back.
Oh no.
It's why we never went back. This is movies. You look like you saw a ghost.
Oh, that just creeped me out a little bit. I don't I'm like, oh god. Now I'm afraid that people are gonna make me watch it, and I don't want to watch it.
Brooke went to that, Berly.
You and Brooke did?
I think so.
Oh, that's funny.
Ooh.
This was really interesting, and I learned so much, and it just opened my mind to so many more curious topics. So.
I know. I can't wait to talk more conspiracy things in the future.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our audience really likes conspiracy.
Yeah.
And Mars would be a fun topic to talk about.
At some point.
A lot of theories that we came from there.
Well, right. That is a whole other thing.
Yeah, we don't have to touch.
Maybe in another lifetime we were on Mars. In the past life.
All right. Well, this has been fun. I'm ready for some grounded guidance, though.
We've been flying through space. Let's get grounded.
Nice.
Yeah, how do you get grounded in space? That's what I want to know. You land on the moon.
Right. She answers her own question.
Oh gosh, I know. I'm so funny.
That was a good one.
Okay, grounded guidance. You are an energy alchemist. You can transform energy anywhere. Create your life around this. This will feed your heart. It will clear the path, and your soul will feel freer. The stagnation in your body will clear. If the message is coming from the heart, there is no doubt and fear. When it's coming from the head can create illusions. So you have to drop further into the heart to feel. That's the difference between heart-centered work and stuff created from the head space. Our ego creates these feelings of fear and doubt, and our ego is what illuminates that we don't have the capacity or we're less than able to accomplish something. When we operate from the heart space and we live from the heart, there is no opportunity for those low vibe feelings because the heart is too strong and too connected to feel anything but pure love and truth. Keep going and keep flowing.
Namaste. I really like that one. That was a good one.
Yeah, I know. I like that one too. So, grounded guidance. For those of you that are new to our channel, we are here live every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'd love for you to subscribe to our channel so you never miss a live show. You'll be notified when we do go live. Share with somebody you think might love our content. And then they can jump into the chat and engage with us on a live chat. And thank you to all of you who join us every week, our engagers, the people that make us laugh. We really do appreciate you guys. And thanks for joining us each week. And then just a heads up, we do have an email, groundedguidanceyt@gmail.com. Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out. Come back next week.
Yeah.
Same place, same time. See you later.
Bye, everybody.
To the moon.
Bye.
Bye. We just wait for him to play us out here. See ya.